Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Cherry Pickers Podcast, the show for all things hockey, featuring your hosts, Zuu and Bee Rhodes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another episode of the Cherry Pickers Podcast featuring your co-hosts, Zuu and Bee Rhodes. Zuu, how are you doing today, brother?
Bee Rhodes, I am having a wonderful day. I'm very excited for this episode of the podcast. It's going to be a special one, but we have lots and lots of news to get through in the NHL. How are you doing, though?
I'm doing pretty good, my man. We've recovered from my cold. We are back. We are healthy. We are ready to go. And it's been a busy week in the NHL, so we're just going to get right after it.
Let's do it.
So starting us off here, we have Maple Leafs icon Borje Salming. He passed away at the age of 71. He played 1,148 games in his career, 150 goals, 637 assists for 787 career points as a defenseman. He played all but one season with the Toronto Maple Leafs. His final season was with the Detroit Red Wings. And Zuu, what a career this guy had, and it's very unfortunate that he passed away.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a staple in the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs franchise. He was a well-loved icon in the franchise as well. Seeing him in his latter days, on the on-ice ceremony is very emotional for Leafs fans and NHL fans in general. But yeah, what a career Salming had, especially as a defenseman, almost putting up 1,000 points in the NHL is incredible. So yeah, it's very tough, obviously, to have an icon in the NHL industry pass away. And we wish all the best for his family. And yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate. I mean, he's Swedish nationality as well, so it's those Swedes, they produce very good defensemen, and yeah, it's definitely unfortunate that he passed away. Mm-hmm. Moving on, we are at the American Thanksgiving point in the NHL at the time of this episode. There's some teams that are in the playoff picture that are definitely unexpected, such as the Seattle Kraken and the New Jersey Devils. I didn't expect them to be doing that good this season. And there's also some teams currently outside the playoff picture, like the St. Louis Blues and the Minnesota Wild, that I thought were going to be in, and they're not at this moment. Are there any teams in the outside looking in that are in trouble, and do you think the teams that are currently in are going to stay in the playoff picture?
Well, first of all, New Jersey, I expected them to make the playoffs this year. On my YouTube channel, shameless self-plug, youtube.com/yourboyzoo, I did a short series before the season started where I predicted where all the teams would finish in their divisions. And I actually had the New Jersey Devils finishing 4th in the Metropolitan Division. And I got a lot of backlash for it. A lot of people were saying that, New Jersey, they're going to be a bust again this year. They weren't even going to be close to making the playoffs, and I'm looking pretty smart right now. I'm not going to lie. I think New Jersey, honestly, is the real deal. I think picking up a solid backup goalie has helped New Jersey win those games instead of relying on Blackwood and his injury history. However, I don't know about the Kraken still. I'm very on the fence about the Kraken. Obviously, they've gotten off to a very hot start. There's like 6 in the NHL or something like that, which is crazy. But I don't think the style of play that they are playing right now is sustainable. Especially, for example, the one game that they played was, we'll get to that game because that game was crazy. But against the LA Kings, they let in 8 goals. And that obviously is not going to win you hockey games, especially in the playoffs, if you're letting in 8 goals. So I don't think the Seattle Kraken are very sustainable. I don't know if they stay in a playoff spot. If they do, it's going to be right on the edge of it. As for teams on the outside looking in, Calgary obviously is a big one for me. Calgary's had a lot of internal struggles right now. They just played against Montreal and they put up over 40 shots and could only score 1 goal. So goaltending and scoring is an issue for Calgary. I think they need to figure something out quick if they want to make those playoffs. Yeah, I don't know. St. Louis is a tough one because everyone counts out St. Louis. Remember the year that they won the Stanley Cup, weren't they in like last place in the league in January or February? Like everyone counts out St. Louis, but they always find a way to make the playoffs and they always have a pretty good run. So I'm not too worried about St. Louis. Minnesota as well. I think they're also a solid team, so I don't think Minnesota really has an issue. I think they're, just getting some tough luck and they're going to get some bounces their way soon. So yeah, there is a couple teams that are expected to make the playoffs this year that aren't in a picture picture right now. I think they just got to get underneath themselves and start playing better hockey, and I think they'll have no problems making the playoffs. But really, the only team I think that's not sustainable is Seattle. I don't think they're going to be able to keep continuing to play this well.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I think that the St. Louis Blues, of all teams, are going to be fine. I mean, they pushed Colorado to Game 6 in Round 2 of the playoffs last year. Like, they're a very strong team. I'd be pretty surprised if they didn't make it, to be honest. Minnesota, I don't know. They're kind of on the fence for me this year. Like, they don't seem as strong as they were last year. I think losing Kevin Fiala was definitely a big blow to that team. So it'd be interesting to see. And Calgary, to me, I really thought they were going to be a really strong team this year based on their offseason acquisitions. I really thought they were going to be right at the top of the division. So seeing them barely at 500 right now is pretty surprising to me. But I would agree with you with Seattle. I don't think their success is sustainable. Sure, they're playing really well right now, but again, like you said, when you let in 8 goals in a game, you're not going to win very many hockey games, especially come playoff time when the defense tightens up and teams are checking harder and it's more difficult to play and score goals. So for me, I see Seattle tailing off at the end of the season. I think Edmonton, Calgary are probably going to jump up in the Pacific, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens as the season progresses. So speaking of teams that are off to a hot start, we got to talk about the Boston Bruins. They just set an NHL record with their 12th straight home win to start the season. They are absolutely flying right now. I think at the time they're recording, they're 19-3 right now. Like they're just
crazy.
They're on a whole nother level. And what are your thoughts on the Bruins?
Yeah, that's I boast about how I'm right about the New Jersey Devils in a playoff spot, and I'll take my L about the Boston Bruins. I honestly had the Boston Bruins missing a wild card spot this year. I thought the injuries to McAvoy and Marchand and Grzelcyk were going to be way more long-term than they actually turned out to be, and I thought that was definitely going to impact how the Bruins performed on the ice, and man, did they ever prove me wrong. They are just absolutely rolling right now. Linus Ullmark has proven to be, one of the best goalies in the league this year. Just everything about their style of play, and they're able to finish their chances. They're locking down defensively. Their special teams have been pretty good. They're just such a good team, and this is kind of it if you think about it for the Bruins. They're starting to get into a little bit of salary cap issues like the Tampa Bay Lightning. Their key players are starting to get older, like Marchand and Bergeron. Isn't Pasternak a UFA as well after this year or something like that? Like it's getting dicey for the Bruins. So this is really, one of the pushes that they have to make before, it all comes crumbling down. But man, they are a wicked team this year, and they are definitely not to be messed with.
Yeah, they are a very deep team, and Charlie McAvoy's been on a whole nother level this year. He's been absolutely flying since he's come back from injury. Same with Marchand. Like, the whole team, really. Taylor Hall, David Krejci, Jake DeBrusk, even the players outside their big three are really playing well, too. So Boston's just on a whole nother level right now, and I think they're going to be a definite contender in the East, and they're definitely going to be a team to watch out for. Speaking of the Bruins, them and the Pittsburgh Penguins, they just unveiled their Winter Classic jerseys. I saw a picture of them. The Bruins one, it was like a black, mainly black, a little bit of yellow
bear.
With the bear, yeah.
The bear.
And then the Penguins, they just had like a yellow P on a white and looks like blue stripes on their jersey. I don't really know how I feel about the Penguins one, but I don't mind the Bruins one. Just what are your thoughts on the jerseys since you've seen them?
I love it, Bee Rhodes, because I'm honestly the opposite of you. I really like the Pittsburgh one. I like the P logo. I like the striping. I like that the base color of the jersey isn't white, because that's just a stereotypical color for a road jerseys is a white color. But I love this Pittsburgh jersey. I don't know. It gives me, obviously, Pittsburgh Pirates vibes, but I think it's a really slick jersey. On the other hand, with the Bruins, I don't know about this one, man. Like, the striping is, like, the yellow that they're using is kind of an ugly, closer to, like, a honey mustard yellow, and I don't really like that. And the bear, I don't like the bear that they use. It's so goofy looking. So, I don't know. It's not the best reveal of jerseys that we've seen before. Obviously, even though I hype up the Pittsburgh one, it's still, not incredible jersey, but it's all right. Yeah, I don't know. They're not the best jerseys ever, but who cares? We're getting another Winter Classic game, so that's always exciting. I love outdoor games.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Winter Classic as well. I'm so hyped for New Year's Day when they play those games outdoors. Those are always my favorite to watch for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still on the hot start train right now. We just talked about the Boston Bruins. We got to talk about a player on the San Jose Sharks who I really didn't expect to be off to this good of a start, and that is Erik Karlsson. He's been absolutely buzzing to start the season. I think he had like 10 goals in his first 14 games or something. Like, he was on a whole nother level. Do you think he's back to his Norris Trophy winning ways, or do you think he's just off to a hot start and he's going to come back down to earth?
That's a tough one because we know Erik Karlsson is a fantastic hockey player. He has suffered through some serious injuries in the past. Obviously, those have kind of affected his play. I don't know. I think Erik Karlsson, he's off to the hot start points wise. But points-wise isn't going to net you a Norris alone, He is playing on a very, very rough team in the San Jose Sharks, and he doesn't have a ton of supporting cast, especially on the blue line with him. I think, honestly, right now, as San Jose, you have to look at flipping him for some prospects or something because he is playing so good. He's making so much money, and who knows if he's going to play this good again. So I think you have to look at the option of flipping him because this is the best time to sell him. But I don't know if he's, Norris caliber yet. He is putting up a ton of points for the Sharks, but yeah, it's good to see him, back on a hot streak and getting back to his old ways because he was one of the most dominant defensemen in the NHL for a few years before his injuries. So it's nice to see it, but I don't think he's at that level quite yet.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think he's off to a fantastic start, and he's been playing really well. And I definitely agree with you in terms of sell him while his value is high because San Jose is very locked in with bad contracts right now. Erik Karlsson's making a lot of money. Vlasic's making a lot of money. Logan Couture. And these guys are on term as well. So San Jose's really in a position where they can't really do a whole heck of a lot with their contract. So if a player like Karlsson is playing as well as he is, you definitely have to look at the option of flipping him to get really good prospects for your rebuild because I think that's the direction that the San Jose Sharks are going. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens come the trade deadline this year, but I do think Erik Karlsson could definitely be an option for the San Jose Sharks to flip. Mm-hmm. So we're going to keep this going with the hot players. The NHL, they announced their top 3 players of the month, or stars of the month, and that is Jason Robertson, Vitek Vanacek, and Mitch Marner. Robertson had 15 goals, 11 assists for 26 points in 14 games during the month. Vanacek had an 8-1 record on a hot Devils team, and Mitch Marner had 20 points in 15 games. So these 3 players are absolutely buzzing. What do you think of each one of their starts to the season?
Oh, man. Jason Robertson is the real deal. He, obviously last year, he exploded and was a goal-scoring machine, and it's evident to see that nothing has changed this year. Like you said, 15 goals in 14 games. Like this, Jason Robertson's on a tear. I want to know what he's eating pregame, man. He's got the secret sauce that he's not telling anyone because he is absolutely fired on all cylinders. But I think the big factor of that is actually the coaching. The Dallas Stars, they released Rick Bowness and he went to the Jets this year. And I think with the mindset of Rick Bowness, he plays a very defensive style game. It's defense first always for Rick Bowness. And now that Jason Robertson doesn't have that mindset fully, he's able to play his game freely. He's able to take more shots that maybe he wouldn't, last few years. I think it's a great situation for Robertson and fantastic for Dallas too, as they have a lot of young guys, forward prospects coming up that are going to help Robertson up there as well. Moving over to Vanacek, an 8-1-0 record on the Devils, man. Vanacek is having a great season. He kind of bet on himself. He wanted to go to a team that would give him the opportunity to become a starter, and he's rivaling Blackwood. When Blackwood's healthy, like him and Vanacek are both 1A, 1B, and they are both doing pretty good for the Devils as the Devils are soaring as well. And Mitch Marner, man. Mitch Marner, 20 points in 15 games. He's on an 18 or 19 game point streak. He just tied the Leafs records for the longest point streak. He's firing on all cylinders too. He's having fun out there. You can tell how he's playing, the creativity, everything about his game and his style. He's just having fun out there, and it's showing on his points production. So yeah, very good start for those 3 players, and we'll see if they can keep it rolling.
And yeah, just like you said with Mitch Marner, he did tie the Leafs franchise record for the longest point streak. He tied Daryl Sittler and Eddie Olchuk at 18 games. Do you think he's going to pass him and get the all-time record all by himself?
I don't see why not. Honestly, I really don't see why not. He's got the weapons around him. He's a very, very good playmaker. He always has a nose for the net. He's such a solid offensive zone player, and I don't see why he wouldn't be able to pass it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Mitch Marner's got a lot of weapons around him, and I mean, every time Austin Matthews is setting you up, like, you're gonna produce. So I don't see why not. I think he'll break it. You got one more on players that are still off to a really hot start this season. Steven Stamkos, he just recorded his 1,000th point of his career, each one of them being as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He is a 2-time Stanley Cup champion with 2020 and 2021. He has 494 goals, 506 assists, in 945 career games. He has had a fantastic career. It's great to see him at 1,000 points. I think at the end of the day, he's probably going to be the all-time leader in points, unless he already is, for Tampa Bay. Just what are your thoughts on Steven Stamkos reaching the 1,000-point milestone?
Yeah, Stamkos is such a feel-good story. I remember when he first got drafted by the Lightning, and there was a lot of pressure on him in his first couple of years. He jumped right to the NHL after being drafted, and he caught the injury bug, and he just wasn't performing on the ice, and he was playing on a pretty bad Tampa Bay team as well. And then he recorded 60 goals in one season, and from there, everything just changed for him. He became such a good offensive weapon. He loves his one-timers on the point on the power play. He became such a leader for that team as well. Just such a great all-around player for the Tampa Bay Lightning, of course, with the success of the 2 Stanley Cups. Just a fantastic player. He's had such a great career. And he's still above point per game in his career, which is crazy. It's crazy to think that he hasn't even played 1,000 games yet just because of injuries. And yeah, regardless of that, he's just such a franchise player for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And yeah, what a great career. And congrats for him for hitting 1,000 points.
Yeah, that's a crazy milestone for sure. And honestly, I think if he wasn't injury prone during his career, I think he'd be rivaling Ovechkin in terms of his goal production. Like Steven Stamkos, when he first came in, like, he was a prolific goal scorer. Like you said, he put up 60 goals. That was in the 2011-2012 season, and it's super rare to do that in the NHL right now. You don't see very many players putting up 60 goals, so he's a phenomenal player, and the fact that he hasn't hit 1,000 games yet is pretty crazy. And he would have been on that 2014 Team Canada team as well if he didn't break his leg during the season. Yeah. So he's had a fantastic career, and congrats to him on hitting the 1,000-point milestone. All right, Zuu, we've talked about all the players that are off to pretty good starts this season. We got to talk about a player that's not having a good start. That is the Calgary Flames goaltender Jacob Markstrom. He's been struggling this season, and he had an interview recently where he said, and I quote, that he sucks at hockey right now. What is going on with the Flames start to the season, and how do they improve, and how does Jacob Markstrom improve as well?
Oh, we could be here for hours talking about the Flames right now with the struggles. As an armchair GM, I like to think I know the solutions, but obviously there's more to the game than what I know. Yeah, it's tough for the Flames. Obviously, your two biggest players leave in free agency. Well, one gets traded. You bring in some new, superstars, Huberdeau and Kadri and Uyghur. Obviously, the chemistry needs to get there. It takes a while. It does take a while. And the thing about it is that they're locked up for a long time. So even if the Flames don't make a cup push this year, they still got Huberdeau. They still got Kadri. They're going to be pushing for a while. Now, the thing about the Flames and why they're struggling so much, there's 2 separate factors. The first factor is that there's a whole lot of Swedish players on that team, and there's not a lot of finish. There is no finish in their game right now. Every shot that they're taking is just muffins from the point and throwing it right into the pads of the goalie. I watched that game against Montreal last night where they put up over 40 shots, only scored 1 goal, and every scoring chance that they had, it wasn't a dangerous shot that they took, and it was just really frustrating because credit to, Jake Allen for making over 40 saves in a game, but it wasn't the hardest 40 saves he'll ever have to make. And that's the thing, too, right now with the Flames. It's literally just they can't finish any plays, and they're not getting the goaltending. Now, Dan Vladar, on the other hand, although his numbers don't show it, has been red hot the last few games. He played against Boston. They lost in empty netters, so they lost 3-1. So he only let in 2 goals on 30-some shots. Then they played Pittsburgh and they lost in a shootout, and he only let in 1 goal in almost 40 shots. And then he played against Florida and only let in 2 goals that game. Dan Vladar is on an absolute tear right now, and that just makes it such a difficult decision for Daryl Sutter, where you have this goalie that's making $6 million and he's underperforming, but he is your number one starter and you want him to get those starting minutes. But then you have another goalie in Dan Vladar who is playing red hot, still obviously trying to earn his role with the Flames organization, but he's playing so good. And that's where it really comes down to, you need Markstrom to perform, and you need Markstrom to shake off whatever's going on. You need him to get back to his old self, or else, Markstrom's in a dangerous territory for the Flames. He's become, a player of interest to trade, So I don't know. I think the Flames just need to get some better goaltending behind them. They play decently in front of their goalies. They just need to get better goaltending, and they need to finish those scoring chances.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing about Edmonton in all honesty too. Like, they're paying a goalie who's not playing as well. They're paying him like $5 million a year, and he's struggling too. I think he's got like a 4 goals against and an 875, and then you got a goalie who's trying to prove himself, who's playing a lot better, who shouldn't be your number one goalie, but he's been performing better. So I understand the situation that Calgary's in, and it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, the defense could be better in front of them. The goaltending could be better. I think it's a combination of both, and I think Calgary's got the tools and the pieces on their roster to play really well. Like, we saw it last year. They had a really good season, but I don't know. It just seems like something's off right now for the Flames, and hopefully they can figure it out. So I saw this comment the other day, and it actually made me laugh, and that is Boston Bruins commentator Jack Edwards. If anybody who's listening who doesn't know Jack Edwards, he is probably the biggest homer of an announcer in the entire NHL, and that includes Jack Michaels of the Oilers. Jack Edwards, he made a comment about Pat Maroon's weight, and as a result of it, Pat Maroon actually donated $2,000 to a mental health charity. I thought it was pretty funny when I heard about it. And what are your thoughts on Jack Edwards?
Well, I mean, how Pat Maroon responded was pretty funny. The comments that Jack Edwards made, though, was not funny really at all. If you guys don't know me, I'm a pretty big boy. I'm pushing, 280 pounds. Weight gain is something that, I've struggled with in the past. There's been times in my life where I've gone to the gym, I've shredded off a lot of weight, and then I've gained it back, It's frustrating because when you see, Jack Edwards make a comment about a professional athlete's weight, like, this guy is obviously in good shape if he's playing in the NHL, and it's uncalled for. If you listen back to the whole scenario, there was no reason for Jack Edwards to say anything like that. But what Patrick Maroon did was fantastic, donating that money to those dealing with mental health and substance abuse issues and image issues as well. That is such a great gesture by Patrick Maroon. The guy, obviously, he's a big boy. He's, 240 pounds, but he's in great shape. And just to see, an NHL player go out of their way to take a negative out of a situation and flip it into a positive is fantastic. So I've never liked Jack Edwards. I think he's a bum commentator, in my own opinion. I'm not a huge fan of Patrick Maroon either, but I love the steps that Pat Maroon took to make things right in the bad situation. So
you did talk about a negative situation, and there is something that happened to the Pittsburgh Penguins that is very unfortunate. That is Chris Letang. He suffered his second stroke of his career, the first one happening in 2014. Definitely a huge loss for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We definitely hope that he's going to be all right. But I got to ask you this. Is he going to continue playing for a while, or do you think he's going to retire sooner rather than later now that he's had 2 strokes?
That is such a tough thing to decide, especially for Chris Letang. At some point, you have to realize which is more important, hockey or your own life. And there becomes a point in your life where you're not playing hockey anymore, Chris Letang's got a family, he's got a wife and kids. He's got to think about, life after hockey. He's got to be healthy for them, for the rest of his life. It's a very tough thing to think about. Chris Letang is getting older. He just signed an extension, which will pay him till he's 40. Is he going to make it to the end of that contract? I don't think so, honestly. But yeah, as for now, there's no timetable on his return. But sometimes you got to look at it and you got to say, okay, well, what are the Pittsburgh Penguins going to do about this? But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter as much as Chris Letang's health. And, we wish him all the best, the speedy recovery, and whatever decision he makes about his career, you just have to respect it because, it's his health. It's his priority. So it's an interesting situation. We wish all the best for Chris Letang. Obviously, we wish him a speedy road to recovery.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at this stage of his career, I don't think Chris Letang really has to prove anything. I think he has the right to make whatever decision he feels is best for his own personal health and his own life. And I think that was the same thing that happened to Jay Bouwmeester a few seasons ago. I think he had a stroke on the ice and he collapsed on the ice, and I don't think he ever played again after that, or if he did, not for very long. So it's definitely a very scary thing, and we definitely hope and wish all the best for Chris Letang. All right, Zuu, we're going to talk about some more positive stuff. I don't want to be a downer talking about people suffering from strokes and stuff. We're going to end the podcast off here talking about the last few topics on a more positive note. We're going to start it off here. The Tempe City Council, they approved the Coyotes' new arena plan ahead of the vote. If this vote goes through and the Arizona Coyotes finally get a arena, hopefully it's going to be a stable building for them. They'll have a stable place to play. What are your thoughts on Arizona potentially getting a stable home finally?
I mean, that's huge, obviously, for the organization. They've been dealing with that issue for quite a few years. It's good to have Arizona as an NHL team. As many people, think that it's not worth it and they don't bring in enough revenue and stuff. It's good to have that exposure to the sport, especially in the more southern states where obviously it doesn't get as cold as it is right now in Alberta here because it's freezing. I think it's fantastic for Arizona to get to get that approval. Is going to bring great strides to the organization and to hockey around the community as well. Having that opportunity as a kid, to be able to play a sport that's not as common, in southern states is fantastic. And I think it's a great step towards the Arizona Coyotes and a great step towards Tempe.
Yeah, I definitely hope that the Arizona Coyotes get their arena plan in place too, because like you said, Arizona and being a southern state in the U.S., it'd be nice to get hockey growing there. And I mean, Arizona is a very vibrant state as well. Like, a lot of people go there, a lot of Canadians travel down there. So I understand the marketing aspect and wanting to get a franchise there and get revenue for the league. I think if they can get an arena built, I hope it brings a lot of fans there, and I hope it gives them a steady income and they can be a stable organization there, because Arizona has had a lot of arena problems in the past, like a lot. They went from Glendale to, I don't even know, they've
Gila
moved
River, I think
Gila
it's called.
River, yeah,
Gila River,
yeah, they've moved like several times, and right now they're playing at the Arizona State University. So just really hope that this ends up working out for the Coyotes, because I think they deserve an arena. They deserve a stable fan base and a stable franchise. So we hope for the best for Arizona going forward. So we have another interesting topic for the week with in terms of positivity. Alex Ovechkin, he just passed Wayne Gretzky for the most road goals of all time. Calm down, everyone. Not all-time goals, just road goals. It was 403. He's soon to pass Gordie Howe on the all-time list as well. I believe he's at like 793 right now. Gordie Howe's at 801, so it's only a matter of time until Ovi passes Gordie Howe. How long until he passes Wayne Gretzky all-time, and do you think he does it?
Ooh, that's a good question. It just all depends on how sustainable his goal scoring is. He's going to pass Gordie Howe this year. No question. He's off to a hot start again, like always. And he's going to pass Gordie Howe this year. No question. As for Wayne Gretzky, I'm going to say to maybe it's probably in his third year, like at 3 years, halfway through the 3 years, he'll pass Wayne Gretzky. I think, Ovi has battled injuries in the past, but he's shown that he is an unstoppable force. He hasn't shown any signs of slowing down yet, and he always has like a knack for finding an open space to score a goal. We always talk about the Ovi spot on the power play, and everyone just says, why not just cover the Ovi spot? And the problem with that is that Ovi is so diverse and he's so able to fake out his opponents that he can get open anywhere on the ice. And I think for that reason, Ovi's goal scoring won't really slow down. And I think he'll probably pass Wayne Gretzky in about 2.5 years, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think Alex Ovechkin, he's going to play until he passes him. I mean, I think there's no shot he's going to retire if he hasn't passed him already by the end of his contract. I think if he's that close to passing him, and there's all this talk that if he's going to break the record, I think he's going to play until he does, because he's battled injuries in the past, but he's been fairly lucky in terms of his health over his entire career. He hasn't really missed a whole lot of time, and I don't see any reason why his goal-scoring ability won't stop. I mean, he's scored from that spot, like he said, on the power play, I don't know how many times, and everybody knows it's coming, but it still works for him every single time. And I mean, I don't see any reason why he can't continue his pace, and I would probably agree with you. I think another 2.5, 3 full seasons, and I think he's going to be first all-time. Moving along here, we had an interesting couple games. And that was Florida and Montreal. They were both very recently in Calgary. And the return of both Matthew Tkachuk and Sean Monahan, they both received fairly warm welcomes in their return to Calgary. However, Johnny Gaudreau is set to make his return. I believe it's the I believe it's the 16th of December.
Something like that, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
And the Columbus Blue Jackets will be in Calgary. Do you think Johnny Gaudreau is going to get a rain of boos, or do you think he's going to get at least some cheers in his return to Calgary?
Say it with me, Brody. Boo! There's no way that Johnny Gaudreau will get a rain of applause. It's tough, okay? So every time Matthew Tkachuk touched the puck against Calgary, he got booed. However, when Tkachuk had his video dedicated to him in the TV timeout, he got a round of applause. And for good reason. Tkachuk did a lot for this organization. He was the player that, teams hated to play against, and he was the player that you love to have on your team. With Sean Monahan, it was pretty obvious. He was going to get cheered no matter what. There was no boos. If you got booed, you should get banned from the Saddle Dome, because Sean Monahan literally did nothing but good for that organization. And I think he scored something like 7 straight 20-goal seasons with the Flames. So Sean Monahan and Matthew Tkachuk, did great things for the team. At least Tkachuk had the decency to say that he didn't want to come back. That's the big thing about Gaudreau, is that, yes, you can respect Gaudreau for what he was. He tied for second place in points last year. He was a fantastic contributor for the Flames. He played all of his career with the Flames, drafted by him in the 4th round up until that point of free agency. However, Flames fans still have a bitter taste in their mouth from this year's free agency, and they don't like how Gaudreau went about it. Even after Gaudreau issued an apology on Twitter, fans still were not having it. So I honestly think Gaudreau is going to get a absolute rain of boos coming down on him. I don't know how many cheers he's going to get.
Yeah, and like what you're saying with Matthew Tkachuk, I mean, like the fact that he willingly told Calgary is like, look, I'm not coming back. They got a good haul back for Matthew Tkachuk. So I think in retrospect, that's another reason too why Calgary doesn't absolutely hate him, is because like they got a return for him. And Sean Monahan, like you said, he played a lot of seasons with the Calgary Flames, and he was a good player for them as well, like 20 goals, probably like 60 points range. I don't know, I don't follow Calgary
around
that
there
much,
yeah,
but
it varied.
He was consistently around that point for quite a few seasons in his career. And yeah, like they were both big staples for the organization, so it's good to see that they got an ovation, that they were welcomed back. But yeah, I would agree with Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, he willingly walked after free agency, and they didn't get anything back. Like, he just left, and that doesn't really go well for a fan base, especially when you spend a lot of your career there and you're a big star player. Like, you'd hope that if the player leaves, you get something back for him. So I definitely understand why Calgary fans are gonna boo him hard. And I mean, I'm not even a Flames fan. I'm an Oilers fan, and I hate Johnny Gaudreau for walking out like that. Like, you don't do that if you're a star player. Like, so we're done hating on Johnny Gaudreau. We're going to move on to
Do we have to be done?
we
Can I keep hating?
You can keep hating, but for the podcast terms, we're gonna move on from it. So we got a coach, a good coach, by the way. That is Lindy Ruff. He just got his 800th career win behind the bench as the Devils beat the Capitals. Lindy Ruff, he ranks 7th all-time in regular season games coached. He won the Jack Adams with the Buffalo Sabres in the 05-06 season. They also reached consecutive conference finals in 05-06 and 06-07. He has also coached for Buffalo, Dallas, and New Jersey. He served on the international stage for Team Canada as well. He won a silver medal at the 2009 IIHF World Championship. He was also the head coach for the 2013 IIHF World Championship. He also won gold as an associate coach at both the 2010 and 2014 Winter Olympics. He's been around. He's a fantastic coach. What are your thoughts on Lindy Ruff getting 800?
I love that you say, oh yeah, he's a pretty good coach, as it takes you, a minute to list off his accolades. Yeah, Lindy Ruff, pretty freaking good coach. I love his bounce back story this year. The Devils starting 0-2 to start the season, and in the second game, the cheers came out, fire Lindy, and eventually, obviously, as you know, the Devils are on a tear, turned into sorry Lindy. So I don't know, Lindy Ruff, he's a great head coach. He's fantastic. He's obviously earned his spot in the NHL. He's very good at getting the most out of his players. He's very talented. He's very smart, very wise, and he's, like you said, fantastic coach. He has all the experience, and no surprise in my mind that he gets 800 wins. Will he get 1,000? Probably. I wouldn't see why not. But very, very good head coach. Congratulations on 800 wins, Lindy Ruff.
I just got one more thing to say before the summer. No goal. So we got some signings to talk about that just happened in the NHL. The Dallas Stars, they just signed Rupe Hintz to an 8-year extension, $67.6 million extension. He's going to be making a little over $8 million a year starting in 2023-2024. A lot of players are getting $8+ mil since the summer. It's actually crazy the amount of players. What are your thoughts on Rupe Hintz's new deal?
The Dallas Stars are sneakily becoming a deadly team, and they're locking up those pieces long term, and it's a very, very smart signing for the Stars. You look at Rupe Hintz past last year, he almost scored point per game with the Stars with Rick Bowness. This year, he's above point per game, firing on all cylinders, playing fantastic hockey, and you lock him up for under 10 mil. Now, I know 10 mil seems like a lot, but you got to remember the cap is going up in 3-4 years, and to get a guy like that that's scoring at point per game for under 10 mil for a long-term deal. You look at the contracts that they've given out. Jason Robertson just got an extension. Rupe Hintz, Miro Heiskanen's on a very good deal. He's only making 8 mil as well per year. Dallas is really getting sneakily good. They've got very good prospects coming up. Ottinger as well in net is a fantastic goalie. They're going to be a very good team in the next couple of years, and with these signings like Rupe Hintz, it's no surprise.
Yeah, Rupe Hintz, for the last couple seasons, I definitely think he was pretty underrated. Nobody talked about Rupe Hintz, but he's a phenomenal player. And like you said, they've got some pieces around him too, like Jason Robertson, Miro Heiskanen, Jake Ottinger, like you said. I think Dallas is only going to get better, and I think they're going to be a scary team in a few years for sure.
And can we talk about how cool Rupe Hintz's name is? That is such a sick name. I just wanted to point that out. What a cool name, Rupe Hintz.
And they also got Kiviranta.
That's a cool team name.
So we got another interesting news about the signing world. There was a player on the Ottawa Senators. They were unable to come into a deal with Alex Formenton. He was an RFA this offseason. The deadline was December 1st. Unfortunately, they could not come to an agreement, so Alex Formenton will not play this season in the NHL. Definitely unfortunate, as he's a good young player for the Ottawa Senators, and I think he's going to be missed going forward. And what are your thoughts on Ottawa being unable to sign this guy?
Yeah, it's really interesting why they weren't able to come to an agreement with Formenton. He's a solid young player. He was a second-round pick by the Senators in 2017. Last year, he had 18 goals and 32 points. Like, he's not a bad, bottom six producer. It's interesting that they weren't able to come to an agreement. Ottawa has a bunch of cap space. Give him a quick bridge deal to play out the year, give him more depth. It is definitely interesting. Obviously, the party of Formanton must have been holding out for a better deal, but yeah, that one kind of caught me by surprise because I didn't even realize he was still a pending restricted free agent, and I'm just surprised they couldn't come to a deal.
Yeah, I'm surprised too, based on what you said. Like, Ottawa does have a lot of cap space, so I don't really see why they couldn't at least do a bridge deal of some sort for a couple of years until he got the money he felt that he deserved. I don't know. It's interesting what happens with the young players because William Nylander a few years ago, they didn't get him done until the very last minute, and a lot of people thought he was going to go back to Sweden, that he wasn't going to play, and it's not always the players too. Like, there's agents involved in this, the two that are trying to get the money for their player. It's not always the player like, oh, I feel I'm worth this, I feel I'm worth that. It's actually more so the agents that are talking to the NHL general managers and the ownership side, trying to come up to a deal of what they feel their client is worth. That's generally what happens in most cases. So it's definitely unfortunate to see what happened with Alex Formanton, and with 18 goals and 32 points last season. I think that's going to be a decent loss for the Ottawa Senators because he does provide that depth scoring in their bottom six. I think they're going to miss that as they're trying to make a push to be a playoff team, or at least in the picture this year. So it's definitely unfortunate, and hopefully he can get a contract sooner rather than later.
I have one thing to add about Formanton that completely, bypassed my thoughts about this situation. Formanton was on that 2018 World Juniors Canada team. And if you haven't heard, in the past few months, there's been tons of issues regarding sexual assault with that team. I'm wondering if that might factor into what's going on with this contract negotiation. I wonder if there's something that maybe we don't know about that. Maybe the Ottawa Senators are turned off, something like that. But that is definitely something to consider, a factor that I didn't really think about. And yeah, maybe that might be a factor as well.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I never really thought of that either. I don't really remember too much that 2018 World Junior team except for Tyler Steenbergen's little clinching goal. But yeah, I never really considered that, and that could definitely be a factor. All right, Zuu, we got a couple other roster moves we got to talk about, both on the goaltending department. We're going to start it off with Cal Petersen. This was one that actually kind of surprised me. He was loaned to the AHL after he cleared waivers. LA apparently sent him down to the Ontario Reign. It's an interesting one because Cal Petersen's on a contract. I believe he makes a little over $3 million a year. I think it's like a 4-year, $15 million deal or something like that. But apparently he has not been playing too great for LA this year, and they sent him down to the minors. So it's an interesting one because he's technically supposed to be their number one goalie. So it caught me by surprise when he was loaned to the AHL. And what are your thoughts on the LA Kings' recent roster move?
Yeah, that was actually a pretty bold one because I don't think anyone really expected that. But if you do look at the the analytics of Cal Petersen and the advanced analytics, he has not been playing good at all. Right now he's sitting at a -10 goals saved above expected. If you use that analytics, that basically means that he's let in 10 goals more than he should have stopped. So yeah, Cal Petersen's definitely been struggling. And that contract that you were talking about too. His cap hit is $5 million for this year, and it's with a modified no trade clause for the next 2 years after this year. So it's a big boy deal. You can't be bought out either. So it's definitely interesting. He cleared waivers. He's down in the Ontario Reign now. I think it's just one of those situations where you got a goaltender that's struggling. Well, I mean, Jonathan Quick isn't doing too well either, but you got a younger goalie that's struggling. I think he just needs to build that confidence back. Cal Petersen's been a pretty solid goalie for the Kings the last couple of years. That's why he earned his contract of $5 million per year. I think he just needs to get down there and stop some pucks and just build that confidence back up and then come back to the NHL better than he started this year.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Cal Petersen's still a good goalie. Like, he's a good young goalie. I think he's got the potential. I think he's going to get his game back. I think it's just going to be a conditioning stint, get your confidence, come back, and I think he's going to be fine, but I guess we'll see what happens going forward. So one other goalie that we're going to talk about, he's also been struggling this year. That is Thatcher Demko. I think he's got like 3 wins and 11 starts. He's got like an .885 save percentage this year. It's not ideal. He just recently suffered a undisclosed injury. It looked like he pulled his groin against the Florida Panthers after he allowed the 3rd goal of the game. I think he's taken off on a stretcher or something like that, and Spencer Martin came in and took over. What are your thoughts on Demko, and do you think he's going to get his form back?
Well, this is a tough one, especially as a goalie. Demko has a history of hip surgeries. He's had double hip surgery before. This is a really, really tough one for Demko. You know, he hasn't really played as good as he did in the bubbles in the 2020 playoffs. And obviously, you know, this year is no different. He's struggled heavily this year. As a fantasy owner of Demko to start this year, I was definitely noticing how bad he was playing. But yeah, for him to, you know, tweak his groin or his hip again, that's dangerous for especially a goalie who relies on, you know, hips for movement a lot more than players do. So this is going to be an interesting one. There's, like you said, there's no timeline yet for Demko. It was just an undisclosed injury, so it hasn't even been announced what it is yet. But yeah, this is definitely concerning for Demko and for the Canucks as well.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want to lose your number one goalie when you're trying to make a push back into the playoff picture after the rough start that they got off to. So definitely hope that it's not long-term, whatever the injury is, and definitely hope that Demko can find his form and help the Vancouver Canucks try and get back in the playoff picture. Zuu, do you got anything else you want to talk about, my man?
I think that's about it for NHL news. It's been a jam-packed week, as always, in the NHL. And, we've covered a lot. But we have a special feature for this episode. This is going to be the first time on the Cherry Pickers podcast that we're bringing on a special guest. So let's get right to it. Well, today, Bee Rhodes, we have a special guest on the podcast, and that is none other than Paul, a.k.a. idontgivetkachuk. Welcome, Paul.
Hey fellas, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, my man. We are so excited to have you on the show, and we're so excited to talk with you, learn more about you, and talk about your content and your hockey thoughts as well. So let's just jump right into it. As a fan of the sport of hockey, born in New Jersey and living in Philadelphia, you are a Flames fan, correct?
Yeah.
What made you choose the Flames as your favorite team?
Look, this story is gonna be a little weird, but just stay with me. So, outside of hockey, before I actually became a hockey fan, I've been a huge, Survivor and Big Brother, like, reality TV show nut. So, it was the Stanley Cup final, and one of the kids in my, I think, 8th or 7th grade class was a Rangers fan. I forget what year it was. It was a year when it was Kings versus the Rangers, and he came in his St. Louis jersey, and I was questioning him about it. And I was like, well, I want to get involved. I didn't actually think I'd stick with it. I was like, I want to pick a hockey team just to start conversation, I guess. And he goes, well, what do you like? And, Survivor fan I was. I was like, well, Jeff Probst in the show goes, tribal council, he's like, in this game, fire represents your life. Once your flame goes out, so do you. So I said, fire, because of Jeff Probst on Survivor, and they're like, oh, well, there's a hockey team called the Flames. There's more to the story, I promise. It's not just because of Survivor, but it plays a big reason to it. So, I go home, and I look at the team, and the colors, and everything, and at the time, I was 4'8". I'm still short, I'm like 5'3" now, but I was 4'8" in elementary school, and Johnny Hockey just started coming into the Calgary Flames and making himself a superstar. So I was like, oh, wow, Gaudreau, he's kind of tiny like I am. Like, if he could score all these goals, it would be pretty cool. And so because of Johnny Gaudreau, I started following the team. I just ended up liking and paying more attention. I didn't think I'd be as into the sport as I am now, but that is basically the story of it. Fun fact, actually, next year, I'm actually applying to go on the Big Brother TV show, so we'll see if I get on that one.
Yeah.
That's so cool, actually. That's such a obscure reason to start watching hockey, let alone the Calgary Flames. So I really do appreciate that. That's kind of cool to hear how you started enjoying the Flames.
Not the way I thought I'd get into it either.
All right, B Rhodes, what do you got for Paul?
I gotta ask you this too. I'm curious, what got you into content creating?
Oh, that's an interesting story. So, in middle school, I didn't really have many, friends. I had a couple of them who are still my buds as of today. But as I was getting into the sport, you want to talk about it, you want to find somebody to talk about it with. And I would start talking about, oh, the Flames did this last night, or, oh, the Flames traded this guy, whatever. And it felt like whenever I was talking to somebody, they weren't really listening, or they were kind of like pretending to listen, but like ignoring me. So I started watching. I've always watched YouTube, but I started watching KTO, the football YouTuber, and O Nyquist, the hockey YouTuber, and I saw how they made videos and stuff. I was like, you know what? Let me try to make a YouTube video and see if it works. It's a hobby I could do. It's something just fun to pass the time. And then once I uploaded the first video, I got hooked. I'm like, oh, I think the day after, I posted like 3 consecutive videos afterwards. And that's kind of how I got started.
Yeah, so for you guys that don't know, Paul, aka idontgivetkachuk, is a YouTuber. He has 23,000 subscribers on the platform. Paul, was there ever a moment when making YouTube videos that you realized, yeah, this is, my calling, what I'm supposed to be doing for a living?
Well, I would say that, when I started uploading the videos and people were like liking and commenting on it and like, oh, that's a cool video and everything. I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty neat. But there was a stretch of time where I started uploading and they got, more people watching, and I was like, wow, like, I didn't think I could reach out to that many people, so I started to really just stick with it. I didn't think I'd be doing it this long, I thought, eventually I'm going to run out of ideas, but, the more hockey evolves and keeps playing, the more ideas you get. I got hooked on it, and it's just something I try and consistently do because it's something I personally enjoy. It's like a hobby.
So, Paul, what got you to have a passion for the game of hockey? Like, what made you get into the sport in the first place?
Basically, if I could put it in one word, I'm going to say 2, pure curiosity of the sport. Again, it all kind of backtracks to that moment where I asked about the sport. I didn't think I'd get into it. Actually, fun fact, I hated sports before I got into hockey. I was the kid in elementary school who watched Pokemon and played Nintendo games, and I had no interest in sports. Gym class would happen, I'd be the one sitting on the corner, reading my Pokemon book and Total Drama Island, so I actually had no interest in this sport. It's funny, it kind of just all happened out of nowhere. The more I started watching the game and paying attention to it, I was like, oh, this is cool, people are scoring goals, and these goalies are making incredible saves and everything, so that's kind of how I got into the sport and kind of stuck with it. And again, you watch YouTubers that try and understand the sport better, and you watch the guys like O Nyquist, who ended up becoming one of my close buddies, and all them talk about the sport, and it helps you better understand it, and it helps you pay attention to it. And, you buy the video game, and then you're playing the video game, and you learn who's good and who's bad based on the ratings and everything. That's kind of how I learned as I went, and then I kind of got interested in history, and that's where it went. But it all basically started then.
Yeah, that's really cool, actually. I can relate to that quite a bit because when I was younger, I wasn't really into hockey until I was about 7 or 8. I was kind of the same way. Like, I definitely have been more on the nerdy side. I myself am a big Pokemon fan, and I actually, fun fact, when I first started making content, it was actually Pokemon videos. Like, that's what I started uploading on YouTube. So I definitely can relate to that, and I think it's cool that, just as time goes on, you learn more about the sport, and the more that you learn about it, you get more hooked on it. I think that's really cool. Has there ever been any times where you've doubted the success of your content, and what have you done to overcome that doubt?
You can ask O Nyquist this question. He'll give you like tons of stories. There's been like 5 times I think where he legitimately like wanted to block me, but I don't think he did. So, I used to get very emotional about it because, you're passionate about something and you want it to succeed, and there'd be times where, like, a video does bad, and there's still times where, like, a video won't, like, do what you think it will do, and it bums you out, but, I credit most of it, actually, to O Nyquist. As we got closer, he kind of became, like, my mentor, and, like, really gave me a ton of advice on it, and probably the best piece of advice he gave me was don't pay attention to your analytics at all. People think that all these YouTubers, the big ones, like, solely look at their analytics and their clicks and all this, but the more you look at that stuff, the more likely it's going to drive you crazy. And then when a video does bad, you're like, frantically searching through your analytics to see, oh my god, what did I do wrong? Maybe it's like this number, certain amount of people didn't click on this, yada yada. So it was basically just don't pay attention to analytics, and you just keep pushing content out, and eventually the people will come back. You start to know, like, okay, it's this time of the year, not many people will be on, or this game's on, people won't be able to watch during this, and you start to learn things like by yourself while not looking at the analytics. But that's basically what has kept me going is, don't pay attention to analytics. If you're having a bad month, you can rebound. If something's not going the way you can, look at, what your viewers are more interested in, and then try and make content based solely off that. People like, your YouTuber, it's your channel. You want to obviously post videos that'll interest you, but you also got to realize all these other people are sticking around. You got to also appeal to them as well, kind of put your wants aside and give them what they want.
That's a very valid point, too. I mean, just don't pay attention to the analytics side and just make the videos and just have fun doing it, and then just do what makes you happy. So that's definitely a good outlook for it. I want to know this, too, because I'm an Oilers fan, like a diehard Oilers fan. I'm really curious. Who is your all-time favorite player for Calgary? And seeing as I'm an Oilers fan and I'm your utter rival, I want to know as well, who is your most hated all-time Oilers player?
Well, it's funny enough, it's not McMuffin or Leon Kreiseidel. It's none of them. It's actually Mike Smith. I can't stand Mike Smith.
Okay.
So I didn't like him when he came to the Flames. I thought the trade was stupid. I was like, why are we getting this like fossil on our team? I was at a KOA camp out that happened. But his pure cockiness and his attitude just drives me nuts. This dude talked all this smack headed into the playoffs, and then he gives up a goal from like 100 feet out, and he's still sitting there yapping. I'm like, you have no right to sit there and talk the way you're talking after you played the way you played. It's his, I guess, I don't want to say confidence, but cockiness was a good word for it. Just drives me nuts. And, when he gives up a weak goal, he'll immediately look at his defensemen like they were the ones that did it. Like, no, Smith, you gave up that goal. That's your fault. So he just drives me nuts. And then the 1 year is like, oh, you just eliminated the Flames from the playoffs. So you happy about that? Yup. I still use every time I could take a dig at Mike Smith, I'll post that gif where he's like, yup. I'd be like, oh, did you give up 5 goals today in the game? Yup, and I put that on there. But Mike Smith is the one. He drives me nuts, and you wouldn't really think it because people would be like, oh, McDavid always owning your team and everything. Like, oh, McDavid, he's good. I respect him because he's good. I don't like the guy. You don't have to like the guy, but if he's a good talent, you gotta recognize the talent. But my all-time favorite Flame, probably Matt Kachuk because I saw him get drafted and get in. Historically, I like goaltenders more, so I would say like all-time Flame, I'd say Mika Kiprusoff.
Yeah.
Watching the highlights of him and
pick.
seeing him dive around and do all these crazy, the scorpion kick save and everything. Goalies has kind of become my favorite position to watch, so Kipper would probably be him, and they're like, oh, Kipper over Ginla? Yeah, Ginla was just as great, but I like the goalies. But in terms of
I
all-time
definitely appreciate...
favorite,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You're good. No, in terms of all-time favorites, probably just Matt Kachuk, because I saw him get drafted, and I named the channel after him, and he left, and I'm still sad.
I was going to say that's really interesting to me, too, because growing up playing minor hockey, I was a goalie, too, so it's interesting to hear the side that you really like the goalies, and Mika Kiprusoff was a really good goalie, too. Like, I hated playing against him as an Oilers fan, because I knew he was just so good, and that he was going to dominate us most nights.
I think that's honestly something, too, like, that current Flames fans, that like Flames fans that just started cheering for the team haven't really got to be blessed with is Mika Kiprusoff. He was, like you said, such a phenomenal goalie, but man, was he ever just so athletic and so creative. Some of the saves he was making was crazy. So yeah, we could definitely appreciate Kiprusoff. We are Kiprusoff stans here. Absolutely.
I started watching the Flames when we had Ramo, Ortillo, and Hiller in net, and I thought Ortillo was going to be this like big phenom goaltender, and I was wrong.
I still remember when the Flames got Vesa Toskala too. Oh my gosh, the dark days. So Paul, on top of your favorite Flames player, what is the most iconic moment in Flames history in your opinion? What was the moment that happened that you're like, yes, this is why I'm a Flames fan?
Well, I first started, and the first year I started watching was the Find Away Flames where they just constantly came all the way back, and that was the year where Stajan scored against Vancouver, and that for me was probably one of the biggest moments. I was like, oh wow, we really came back. But there were a couple moments. Another one is when I was in the hospital for scoliosis, and I just got metal rods placed in my back, and the Flames were playing the Flyers, and we're listening to the radio broadcast. And I think that was the game where we played Elliott, and we came all the way back and won the game, I think, in overtime. I think it was actually Monahan who scored it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I was cheering from, like, the window side of the hospital. Like, yeah, let's go. I'm a little walker because I couldn't walk all the way. And, but no, the last moment actually was when they finally beat Dallas with Gaudreau's goal. Because after the first year, I saw him get to the second round, and then I didn't see him get there since. And, like, or we'd make it and we just lose. But I was getting real tired of it. I'm like, oh, if we lose to Dallas again, I'm going to be so mad, right? So, and then I was up all night. I did not care how loud I was. Normally, I was sitting in the living room when I watch it, and I got to be quiet. It's like, go to bed, or like something like that, because my parents in the other room. But when Gaudreau scored that, I didn't even know it went in first off, because Andre was driving me nuts. I'm like, just let one through. Like, and so I didn't like that voodoo stuff they were doing on Reddit either. I actually unadded the Reddit page because of that. I thought it was weird. But yeah, he put it in. I was like, we scored! I got up. I was like, let's go! I was running laps around my living room, so that was probably another moment. There's 3 really I could pinpoint.
That Gaudreau goal was like so iconic for me too, because that was really like the peak of my content. I was doing like watch along parties for those playoffs. I was streaming my own commentary for the games and stuff like that. And yeah, I've never freaked out over a Flames goal more than that Gaudreau goal. And I actually because I had a bunch of hotkeys ready so I could play the goal horns when teams scored, and when Gaudreau scored, I actually played the Dallas one. Goal horn. Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, but that stream, like, when Gaudreau scored that overtime goal, I had like 200 people in my chat watching the stream, and that was a moment that I'll never forget. And I agree with you. That was probably one of my most iconic Flames moments in history too.
Yeah, when Johnny had the A on his chest, I say he's a different breed. I was like, bro, they put the A on his chest, and he just went off.
Yeah.
So, Paul, I'm curious, with the NHL doing the reverse retro jerseys, I want to know your opinion on their current reverse retro jersey, as well as what your favorite Flames jersey is of all time, and also your least favorite Flames jersey of all time.
Ooh, okay. So the reverse retro, I never was a fan of the pedestal, so when they brought it, I didn't really care for it. I was like, okay, because there's not many options you could do. Like, how many reverse retros? I think the whole reverse retro thing, they should have stuck with only one, because you do a multiple of them. You know, certain teams, they don't have like enough jerseys to do reverse retros 4s and 5s and 6. So I was like, oh, they're bringing the pedestal back. I was like, oh, whatever. I like the horse head. I have the original horse head jersey, and I have the new one. I have like 15, 16 different Flames jerseys, and 2 of them are in there. But my favorite one is actually the jerseys they wore to the 04 final. I like the simplicity of that one. I finally got a home and away one. I think the home one I actually got robbed. I think it's a fake, and I'm like, oh man. But because it looked better on eBay, but I bought it. It's still the same one, but I like the home jersey that they wore in the 04 final. Just the simplicity of it. I know there's a ton up there in Canada you can get, but I just can't get them where I'm at. It's really hard to actually find anything of Flames where I'm at. I'll find a keychain and I'll get it just because it has the logo on it. Like, that's how rare it is over here. But I would have to say that's my favorite jersey. And my least favorite Flames jersey, I gotta think. I'd probably say the one where they had the Calgary written on there, and it's in like
the script.
Cursive. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. I would probably say that. I love
the script jersey.
I mean, I don't hate it as much as the people hate it. They're like, oh, it's the worst thing ever, from what I've seen on Twitter. But that would probably be my least favorite, just because I've never been. I'm like, it's okay. It's not like you don't look at that and go, ooh, Calgary Flames. Look at it and go, oh, what is that?
I mean, to be fair with Calgary too, they have such a good color palette that it's hard to miss on jerseys. Like Like they have like the black, red, and yellow is such a good color palette. And I even use it for my own color scheme because like it's so good. So I agree with you. Like I like the script jersey. I think I like it more than a lot of people do, but I can understand why, you don't like it as much because it's, yeah, like you said, it just is Calgary. There's nothing to do with the Flames on it.
Yeah.
So Paul, since you make videos on very obscure things in hockey history, we want to hear a crazy cool fact that we or the viewers may not have heard before. Do you got one on the top of your head?
Oh, I have to go through my scripts real quick or something. But there was like a bunch of crazy stuff I still have to say. There's stories I have that I want to make videos of that I can't because I don't know of like everything of going on. But, oh my god, it's the top of the dome. You're making me think on the fly. Here's a crazy fact that I actually have right now. I'm thinking of making a YouTube short on it. I don't know yet, but in the MLB, there's a ton of games that get canceled due to rain delay, but a crazy story I actually found was it was an NHL game that actually got canceled due to rain in an indoor arena. It was in 1995 between the San Jose Sharks and I think the Red Wings, and the game had to get canceled due to rain delay because I think it was something similar to Nashville scenario where like the arena got flooded or a pipe busted due to the rain. Messed up the pipes or something like that, and it actually got canceled and rescheduled. I think it's the only game in NHL history. Here it is. The Sharks and Red Wings could not play that night because heavy rains caused flooding from the nearby Guadalupe River. Now they got canceled, so they had to reschedule it. So I think it's like the only NHL game ever to be canceled due to rain delay. And first you hear that, and it's like, oh, baseball does all the time, but you never think rain delay in hockey.
Even on top of that, you'd think it'd be an outdoor game that would get delayed from rain, but no, it was an indoor game. That makes it even crazier, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the coolest one I could come up with, but it was one I have open up, so it put me on the spot. I had to pull something out of my head.
We're putting pressure on you. Bee Rhodes, you got any more questions for Paul?
I've got a couple, yeah.
Let's hear
so the World Junior Championship is coming up. It's actually a pretty big tournament here in Canada. I'm actually curious, do you keep up with the tournament in the United States? Is it big there like it is in Canada? And if so, do you have a favorite memory of watching Team USA?
So, I don't pay attention to it as much as I should. I mean, I'll watch it and I keep up with the stats. I actually have the score app and I have it pinned as like one of the options to look at. I look at who scores and everything. The last couple of years I've paid attention to it. It's not as big here in the United States. Here it's all, American football and I mean, not even really baseball, more basketball, NBA. But the World Junior isn't really as hyped up as it is in Canada. I know Canada, they love their hockey there.
We love it.
But, Coronado was on the USA team, so I watched that one. And when Dubé was a prospect and Team Canada, I saw him. I think he was a captain. And I remember... I'm not going to say it because I'm not too sure about my memory things, and I don't want to just say something and sound like like I don't know what I'm talking about. So I guess I'll just stop there. But I don't really have any specific memories. I guess the only recent memory I know is I don't even think it was World Juniors. I think it was a completely different tournament. But Mangiapane really popped off the one.
Yeah, that was the World Championships.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
That's probably the memory I could bring up off the fly. And that when Dubé won. Oh, no, I actually have one. When they when Aho, Puljujarvi, and Patrick Laine, I think, were that mega line that just crushed it the one year. That's probably my favorite memory. I just realized it. I actually did an NHL franchise and put all three on the team so I could make the line happen again.
Yeah, well, I think, Brody, do you remember, was that the 2014 World Juniors? I think it was 14 or 13.
The year with Aho, Laine, and Puljujarvi.
Yeah.
That was the 2016 team because they
16.
also had Kasperi Kapanen on that team. Like they were loaded.
Yeah, that was a really good Finland team. Yeah, I think isn't that one of the only times Finland won gold as well in the tournament? Like they won
Finland won 2016. They won 2019 as well, and then they because they beat Canada in 2019, and then Canada beat Finland in the gold medal game this year. So they've actually been pretty competitive the last few years.
Yeah, it's crazy because like up here in Canada, we absolutely love the World Juniors. Like that's like Boxing Day tradition. If you're a hockey fan, like you got Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and World Juniors Day. Like that's how it works here in Canada. So it's interesting to hear that it's not as popular in America, but it's understandable too because America has all the American sports as well that go on as well. So
yeah.
I got one last question for Paul. If you don't got any more questions, Zach. I
No,
don't
you're
know.
good to go.
Okay. So I just have one last question for you. What are some activities that you enjoy during the off season of hockey? Like, do you have any hobbies that you enjoy doing outside of content creating and not involved with hockey?
So I hang out with my buds all the time. We'll do like some things. We're actually gonna go throw axe throwing tomorrow for my buddy's birthday party.
Ooh.
But outside, I mean, I'm kind of. I'll be honest, I'm kind of boring. I don't really do much. I'll sit at home and I'll play NHL. During the off season though, it's like summertime. It's like my birthday and everything, so I get to celebrate that and go to the beach and everything and hang out. But there's actually a hockey, roller hockey rink by the college that I'm at, which is like 10 minutes away from me. So I just go up to the college and play on the roller. I can't roller skate or nothing. I had to voluntarily start playing goalie because we would shoot on empty nets. I'm like, this is lame. Anybody want to go in the net? And nobody did. So I'm like, you know what? I went to, I think, Dick's Sporting Goods and bought a bunch of goalie equipment. It doesn't look too pretty, but it does the job. I like the baseball glove better than the goalie glove because the one I have it isn't that great. But I mean, go figure. They put the shortest guy in net. And they're like wondering why. It's like, oh, why aren't you stopping any balls? I'm like, well, not for nothing. Look at how tall I am. Put me in a net. Like, of course you're gonna go top shelf. Like, come on. There's only so much I can do.
At least you tried. Like, at least you volunteered to jump in net. Like, that takes balls right there.
My
like,
goals against average is probably like in the 400 range. That actually gives me an idea. I wonder what NHL goalie is the highest goals against average.
Well, I bet your goals against average is right on par with Mike Smith, so.
Oh, there you go.
Any more questions for Paul B. Rhodes?
That's all the questions I had for Paul.
I think we're run dry. Paul, we appreciate you so much for hopping on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for coming on, Paul. That was a blast, man.
Yeah, is there any shout-outs or self-plugs you'd like to put in before we conclude the episode?
I don't want to. I guess I'll say, subscribe to my channel, but also Zoo's got a channel. Go subscribe to his channel. I don't know what Brody has, but if he has anything, go check him
I
out.
got nothing, dude.
Brody's got a TikTok.
All right,
B. Rhodes has got a TikTok.
Check out his TikTok. He's doing all the dances and everything. I don't know what he does on there, but he's probably doing something on there. Go check him out. Zoo,
I'm doing some all right, that's for sure.
Zoo, it's been really fun getting to know you, bud. I think I found you. I don't remember how I found you, but it's been really cool getting to talk to you and get to know you. You're actually a really cool guy. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I don't really do many podcasts, so this is like kind of a first for me, but I had a really good time.
I'm glad that you had a good time, Paul. We appreciate you hopping on. As always, we appreciate all you listeners listening. Our podcast is available on all streaming platforms, whether it be Spotify Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and on YouTube. We appreciate you all for listening. Take care.